It's a snowy, wintry day here in Utah, and we are headed over to Ryan's house, to the garage, to do a little modification. It's not uncommon for us to work on our Jeeps and get them prepped for summer and spring during these winter months. We can't do as much off-roading because most of the trails up here by us are closed off. We can zip down to Moab and still enjoy it, but with all the snow and cold and things like that, you can't do nearly what you can do in the drier seasons. So we spend a lot of time in the garage, modifying our vehicles, getting them, you know, prepped for the next year, thinking about all the upgrades that we didn't do last year and trying to get them done. So this year, this winter day, we are going to be heading over and helping him install some upper and lower control arms by Metalcloak. Should be a lot of fun. Enjoy. So just walked into Ryan's garage here. Looks like he's already getting started. So you've taken off the rear tires and jacked us up, huh?
Yep, and I'm getting the most important tool ready.
Oh, look at that.
Strap.
The ratchet strap. When you're doing control arms, ratchet straps are the key. You can fiddle around with raising the Jeep and lowering the Jeep and moving the axle around, things like that. But if you have a ratchet strap, you can literally pull it right into position and it makes the job so much faster. Now, it's winter time and it's not cold in here. Why not?
Well, this is a non-insulated garage, but I got myself a Mr. Buddy.
Oh, hey there, buddy. What you doing?
That buddy is keeping us warm.
Nice. Oh. This moving blanket comes in handy. We use it to lay down beneath us as we're working, and I gotta tell you, it is awesome to be able to have a nice spot where you can easily see the bolts that are laying on the ground, where it adds a little bit of comfort, and more than anything else, where you can continually spill things so that it smells like diff fluid. So obviously the first thing you got to do is raise the Jeep up if you choose to. And it is possible to do this without raising the Jeep up and just leave it on the ground. But it makes it a lot easier to get to the bolts and get to the parts if the wheels are off and it's raised up. It'll just make your job a little easier. If you have a lift in your garage, invite me over because that sounds like fun. The next thing we got to do is take the old control arms off. And we're going to do this one side at a time, where we'll take the upper and lower control arm off, put the new upper and lower control arm on, bolt everything down. We won't torque them until everything's on the ground and the vehicle's supporting its own weight. But let's go ahead and get started on removing those control arms. So 21-inch socket on a breaker bar.
And then the key to breaker is to make sure that you get close enough to the ground that you can slip off and punch the cement.
That's not funny, dude. That hurt. My hand still hurts from that.
I'm not doing this on film. That means you're doing it right.
Is that a duck?
Yeah, it means you're doing it right.
Wow. Now inside the upper control arm here, not the lower, but inside the upper, there's something called a flag nut. A flag nut is basically a nut that has a bar on it, and we can show it to you right here. You can see there's a bar right here, so you don't have to hold anything on the opposite side. This side, you can see, also has a flag nut, so it's gonna stop it from rotating, but you could also get a wrench on that. The upper one you couldn't get a wrench on, so it's got a little flag nut in there. So all you have to do is worry about doing this side here. On the bottom one, you could do the same, but if you wanted to put a wrench on it, you could. Now, before you get started, another thing you want to do is you want to hit all your bolts with a little bit of penetrating oil, WD-40 or whatever your brand is. As they soak, it'll help get everything loose to make it a little bit easier as you start removing those bolts. If you do get stuck with a bolt that doesn't seem to want to come free with your breaker bar and your wrenches, another great approach is to put a little WD-40 on there, add a little heat, like a heat gun or a torch, and then reapply the WD-40. And you kind of repeat that process. WD-40, a little bit of heat, a little more WD-40, a little bit of heat, and then you try undoing it. If it doesn't come again, yes, exactly. If that doesn't work, then you're screwed. You also want to lift your axle up just a little bit, just enough to take the pressure off of it so the whole weight of the axle isn't on the control arm. That will actually help make sure that when you do go to unbolt everything, that it will do it nicely. And if you have it the right spot, it'll just pop right off. Then you can do the top one. Wrong way. Whoa, getting reckless. Voila. Now you want to save these nuts, or these bolts, because you're going to reuse them. So I always put them back on just to make sure I don't mix them up. Even though they're probably interchangeable, I like to make sure that they're all together. So put the nuts back on, and this is my front and rear on the lower control arm on the back. So that's one off, 3 more to go. Once you've applied your heat and you let it soak in a little bit, you can repeat that process a few times, then get your breaker bar on it. Nice, slow, steady movements, and get that bolt just moving enough where you can confidently say that if you apply your ratchet or your ratcheting wrenches to it, it's not going to hurt it. So making good progress here. We've got the lower off. Upper's going to be off in just a minute. Makes it a lot easier with that flag nut, huh? Only have to hold one side. Yeah. So with the upper and lower control arms removed, what we've also done, because the new control arms are actually longer than the old ones, what we're going to do as well is we removed the sway bar and we disconnected the shock here. That'll give us a lot of freedom to move this back and forth, because this axle is going to have to move back almost a full inch. Take a look at the difference in these two control arms. You can see significant difference in terms of width, in terms of the bushing. You know, this Duroflex bushing is made out of Kevlar. It's got a lot of flex to it, and it can move a lot better than this Cleveite bushing. Should give a lot of great articulation. Now, you can see also, this is lined up here. With this lift, it's actually going to be longer. Now, you'll want to consult the specs that are in the instructions to make sure you put yours exactly where you want it to be. But we're adjusting those. We're going to clamp the jam nut down. That's this nut here, okay? Clamp that jam nut down in exactly the right spot, and then put it in place. Now, when you clamp it down, one thing I like to do is put it in the right place, put a piece of tape on it like this, and that will hold it in place, and then you won't actually fully clamp it down, because it's going to be hard to clamp it down on its own. You got to clamp it down once it's on the Jeep.
One more. That's it.
So now we're attaching a ratchet strap to the axle and running it back here to the back of the Jeep. And the goal here is to strap everything through, tighten that ratchet strap, and it's going to pull the entire axle assembly back here just enough so we can get that control arm in place. So as you're putting your ratchet strap in place, make sure that as it tightens, it's not going to bind anywhere in here. It's not going to hurt anything or damage anything. Stay clear of any brake lines, ABS lines, etc. And then also give yourself plenty of room. So you want to try and bring this strap as close to the axle as possible, okay? And that gives you all this room, so as you tighten, you can get as close to the bumper as you need to without actually binding on it. And you can see already, you can see the axle starting to move. So when you're doing the upper control arm, put this in only about this much first, just to line it up. There's a spot inside, so there's got a flag nut, which makes it a little easier, but there's a little notch inside there.
This is looking up from the bottom of the frame.
So you see that little notch right there? the flag nut inserts right into that nut, right into that notch. Then once you know you've got it in the right position,
keep doing it.
I need to get a... And it's nice to bungee this up just to kind of hold it in place as you're working. Gives you a space for a free hand as you're tightening it up. You don't want to tighten it all the way. Again, you want it just to be loose, tight enough that everything else can go in place. Always make sure you put a little Loctite or thread locker, whatever you like, if you don't like to use the Loctite brand, down in there before you tighten things up.
Should probably go the right way.
I was about to say, and then you should tighten them, not loosen them.
Yeah, I've done that a time or two today.
Something that helps me is right to tight, left to loose. And if you don't know that, you shouldn't be working on a Jeep. The nice thing about doing this side after you do the other side is that your WD-40 has had a chance to soak in. So all of these should be really easy to break. Of course, should be, and now that I've said that, probably means that I'm going to have a challenge on this one, but all these bolts should come off very simply. Well, let's get these. The other thing to be aware of too is as you're working, if you've created bind by torquing or moving, things like that, that you can use your jack to raise or lower so that this doesn't feel like it's quite so tight. Because even if I get this all the way loose, the bolt in there could be, see if I can describe this the right way. Let's imagine the bolt is in here and it goes smoothly into that. But if you've got weight or pressure on it, it's now going like this, which means it's making it hard to pull out. So you want to try and relieve that pressure as much as possible so that it doesn't bind and makes it easier to get those bolts out. And I think for that reason, I want to raise this up a bit. The other thing you can do, which helps a lot, is use the torque wrench. Using hand tools, it's a little slower, and it's good exercise. All right, so the last thing you do once you get the control arms off is to get the new ones on. So there's the last of the old control arms. Have you already measured the new ones?
Yes, they're all ready to go.
All right. Well, let me pass you the first one. Let's do upper first.
What went with this bolt?
A nut that's probably on the ground. Did you find it?
No.
Well, you shouldn't have lost it.
I found it.
Yeah, nice work.
I didn't lose it.
You know, I can only hold this. This thing is so beefy that I'm literally, my arm's going to fail. I better pass it to you quick. That's not nice to say. All right. It's always easier to do the upper front side first. Get that bolt in. And remember, that flag nut in the upper side is tricky. But get that in first, and then you'll be able to position this and squeeze this into the right place. So start with the front of the upper control arm. Okay, we've got the front bolts on both the upper and lower control arms in place loosely. Now it's a matter of, you can just see how that is just not even close to lining up here. So what it's going to take is lowering the axle, raising the axle, as well as pulling the ratchet strap back. So we've got to actually do a little bit of pushing and pulling to get this in exactly the right spot so we can get the bolt through on this upper one. And then we'll do the same thing for the lower. Give yourself an idea of how close we are.
So we do this like we did last time.
So you put a little pressure on it and then use a mallet.
Where's the mallet?
Mallet, there it is. So use that to pry this open. Use the mallet to hammer it down into place. And you see when we do this, the holes are definitely not lined up.
So this one's going to be a little bit
So this one we have to pull this way, put the axle in a bit.
What do we got back here first?
Ratcheting wrenches make the job so much easier, especially in these really small spots. All right, after a little bit of effort, really just moving this back and forth, you know, there's at some points, Ryan is grabbing on to the bumper here and using his feet to push on the axle just to give me just enough space where I can get that bolt in. Other times we try lifting up the jack or lowering the jack. It's just a lot of just back and forth to get it in the right spot. Once you can get all 4 bolts in loosely, then it's time to start tightening everything up. Put a little bit of Loctite on your nuts, do those jam nuts up, and pretty much the last thing you'll want to do before you finish up is get your tires back on, lower it down, and then you torque everything once it's on the ground. You want to make sure everything's under weight and under load is what they call it before you torque everything down to the right specs. Look up the specs that you'll want to have, but this is really easy. You can really do almost everything with a 21 millimeter ratcheting wrench and breaker bar. Almost all of these nuts in here are that 21 size. So it's actually a really, really easy job. Again, a lot easier if you take the wheels off and raise it up so that it gives you that ability to move the axles in and out and around. But you can do it with tie-down straps and ratchet straps. And you can do that, you know, while it's on the ground with tires on the ground. We've done that before too. But hope it was enjoyable. We're going to show you the finished product here in a moment. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to our channel so you can see other great videos that we're doing and see other improvements we're making to Ryan's Jeep as well as my Jeep. You can also watch some of our fun off-road adventures. We're always out there having fun and enjoying ourselves in Moab or here in Utah County. And don't forget to like it and share it with people if you think it's appropriate. Thanks again for watching. Hope you enjoy watching this Metalcloak lift going from dual rate lift up to the full Gamechanger at a 3.5-inch lift size. It turned out great. So we're torquing these lower ones to 125 foot-pounds, which is a lot of torque. There it goes.
Yep.
You got it.
Nope. I don't.
Come on, you can do it.
There's just no leverage. It's like at 122 right now.
So Ryan, we're all done. Overall, what'd you think of the install, difficulty level, and the overall end result?
Difficult at level, low, maybe medium, if you don't know how to use a ratchet strap. Overall result, so far, really happy with it. We're gonna take it out and drive it around, see if we notice any of the shimmy in the rear drive shaft that would let us know if the pinion angle is wrong or not.
Yeah, that's a good note. The control arms lengths that you set to based on the instructions that are in there are just a starting point. So when you get it in there, if you notice when you're braking, if you notice a little bit of vibration, or when you're decelerating or accelerating, you know, based on what it is, the instructions actually will tell you, hey, the upper lower control arms, you know, the
go in and out of it.
Rear need, you know, things like that. It'll tell you where you need to adjust. So, you know, listen for that as you're accelerating, as you're decelerating, as you're braking, things like that. If you get any kind of vibration, it could just mean that your pinion angle, which is basically your axle, needs to rotate this way so that your drive shaft goes up or down and isn't torqued, you know, improper. So overall, that's a great tip. Other impressions?
Easy install.
Yeah.
When you have the right tools and you have the right setup and you take the time to prepare and then to go do it, and practice as many times as you can. Go out and help your buddies install on their Jeeps so that when you get to yours, you already know what you're doing.
Yep, we've done that quite a few times, so it's been a lot of fun. Thanks for watching. We had a lot of fun doing this, and hopefully it made a difference for you and helped you out. Let us know in the comments below. Thanks. Not bad.